Well, thank you and good morning. I'm making an assumption that I'm up on the screen and that y'all are hearing me there in the sanctuary. So, good morning again. So, today we're going to do a little bit of an exploration. We're going to explore abundance. And it's not simply something we possess, but it's a state of consciousness that we cultivate. I'm so happy to be with you. And I look at every time I get to speak with you there in Brownsville that is an experience of an abundance in my life because I love sharing. I love being part of your community and many communities across the country. And so let's look at this abundance thing. When we hear the word abundance, we may immediately think about money or income, possessions, or financial security. Those things, they are part of our human experience. And there's nothing unspiritual about desiring stability, sufficiency, and the resources that are required for us to live our life of purpose. Yet in unity, prosperity is understood as something much greater than material wealth. Prosperity includes that consciousness of God's all-sufficiency. It includes love and peace and wisdom. It includes friendship and health and opportunities. It includes our purpose and our ability to begin again. That's something that I think is so important for us because we are human and we get off track sometimes. Sometimes some old trainings and teachings and mindsets sneak back in. And when they do, we have the opportunity to begin again in that proper alignment with Source. Our co-founder, Charles Fillmore, he taught that true prosperity begins in consciousness. In his book, Prosperity, he explains that visible conditions of our lives, they're influenced by the ideas that we hold and we cultivate. So before abundance becomes a circumstance, it begins in the awareness as a divine possibility. An abundance mindset is the spiritual realization that we live, we move, and we have our being within that infinite field of divine good, or that infinite field of potential. The affirmation that I've been using this month as I've been speaking with churches across the country is, I am open and receptive to the infinite flow of divine abundance. Every day I receive and give freely, trusting that good is always flowing to and through me. And so I'll say that a few times during the service today. And so when you hear it, just open your hearts and be open to receiving that and making it your own. The first few words of that statement, I am open and receptive, those are so, so important. Because the good of Source, the good of God may already be present, just right there. But until we become willing to recognize it and receive it and cooperate with it, it's just there. It's not something that is having an impact in our life. You spoke this morning in the about God, as ever present and omniscient and all that. That's our first foundational unity principle. And that teaches that God is absolute good, everywhere present. And so that means that God isn't distant from us somewhere out there. I often joke and say, it's not Santa God sitting up on a cloud going, okay, poof, you get this, or poof, you get that. That's not what it's about. God is not occasionally available. God is not withholding good from someone and granting it to others. God is that one presence and one power, active in the universe and in our lives. And when we affirm abundance, we're not trying to persuade a reluctant God to bless us. We're awakening to the spiritual truth that divine good is already present and available. Let me say that one more time. We're awakening to the spiritual truth. And that spiritual truth is divine good is already present and available. Jesus, our brother in Wayshower, said, it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. And so in unity, the kingdom of God is understood metaphysically as that realm of divine ideas and spiritual potential that is alive and active within us all the time. Not just when we're good, not just whenever we're in full alignment, but it's always available to us. And that place of that heaven consciousness is not just a place that we enter after death. It's a state of consciousness that we can experience right now. And that kingdom, it includes faith and wisdom. It includes imagination and love and strength. It includes understanding, order, and zeal, release, life, and power. Gee, I think I just went through the 12 powers or the 12 attributes. So all of that is available in that realm. You know, Charles Fillmore identified those 12 spiritual powers as faculties of that true Christ nature that is within every one of us. But are we focusing on it? Are we giving it power? Are we living into the full potential? So when we say that the kingdom is within, we're affirming that the spiritual resources that we need are already present in potential, and it's up to us. And there's a central teaching in Unity that prosperity consciousness, and that's that God is our source. And many times we look at the fact that, oh, well, my job, that's where I get my money, or through my retirement funds or different things like that. Well, a job could be a channel. Your retirement funds could be a channel. A client, a family member, those may be channels by which your prosperity and abundance flow. And the truth is that no individual, no institution or circumstance is the ultimate source of our good. God is the source. And Charles Fillmore repeatedly, he distinguished between the divine source and outer channels. Channels are there. That's the place where we may have them show up. But we often mistake the channel for the source, and we become fearful whenever a channel changes. We may believe that if one job ends, that our supply is over. If one person says no to us about something that we're seeking, we may go into this, oh my gosh, there's nothing available. I'm kind of stuck in this situation. But that's not true. If one opportunity closes, sometimes we think, well, that didn't happen, so it's never going to happen. That's not it. Channels change, but the source remains constant. The source of divine ideas, they remain present to us all the time. The source of courage and wisdom, the source of creativity, that's always there. That's always present. But it's important for us to learn to embrace that. Myrtle Fillmore, she learned that truth in relationship to her healing. She turned away from the belief that outer appearances have the final word, and she began speaking the words of life to her body. She didn't deny that she was experiencing these ailments, these symbols of an ailment, but she chose to affirm a deeper spiritual reality. In this same way, prosperity consciousness doesn't deny financial or practical challenges, but it refuses to let those challenges define the whole truth of our lives. We talk in Unity about lack consciousness or scarcity consciousness, and that's exactly what it is. It's a consciousness. It's not the only experience, of having limited resources. Scarcity, it becomes a pattern of thought. We get caught up in that realm of lack. We might say there's never enough, or I'm going to miss my chance, or, so-and-so succeeded at that. And so that just means that there's not as many opportunities available for me. Or here's the one that I find with so many people. I've got to hold tightly to everything I have, because if I let it go, there will never be anything else. Unity teaches that our thoughts are formative, they're creative. And this doesn't mean that every difficult circumstance is caused by one isolated negative thought, but it means that the beliefs that we constantly entertain, those are the ones that influence what we notice, what we expect, what we choose, and what we express. Charles taught that ideas are foundations of expression. And a divine idea accepted into consciousness can become the basis of a new experience. And so therefore, when lack thoughts arise, we don't condemn ourselves. We observe them. And we direct our attention. Remember, one of the first things I said is we have the ability to change, to redirect. And so we want to, when those thoughts of lack or scarcity come up, we want to redirect our attention to the spiritual truth. We may say, at this moment, I'm facing a financial challenge. And that may be an honest statement, but we don't have to continue with it. Instead, we might affirm, this condition is temporary. God is present. Divine wisdom is active within me, and new ideas are available. I'm guided toward my next right step. And unity doesn't ask us to deny facts. So many people get confused and think that a denial is denying that something exists. That's not it. But we're asked to recognize that the facts are not always the final spiritual truth. We're asked to recognize that when I deny something, I'm not denying that it exists. I'm denying that it has the power over me, and that most of the things that come along are temporary. I mean, gosh, let's face it, we're temporary. So that's what it's all about, is this is just an experience in this moment, and I have a choice on how I experience it and how I see it. It's emphasized that substance is not limited to the physical objects or money or whatever. In unity metaphysics, divine substance is that underlying spiritual reality from which ideas and opportunities, they form and they emerge. Prosperity often begins with an idea. An idea may become a conversation. A conversation may become a partnership. And that partnership, it may become a new opportunity to transform a life. Maybe, perhaps the abundance we need today is the first abundance of wisdom. That might be what we need. Perhaps it's the courage to make a phone call or a willingness to ask for help. I know that's one of my biggest challenges, is asking for help, And so that's where I've had a lot of growth opportunities, and I'm doing better. I haven't perfected it yet, but I'm doing better. Perhaps what our abundance is calling for right now is the imagination to see the possibility, and that maybe it's a possibility that we previously overlooked. Or maybe it's the desire for abundance to make a necessary change. Divine abundance frequently reaches us through the mind as guidance or inspiration and insight. And that's why prayer and meditation are essential prosperity practices. When we're in the silence, we become receptive to the divine ideas that are already seeking expression through us. Myrtle engaged people and she encouraged people to enter into a life relationship with that indwelling presence of God. She taught that prayer is not begging an external power to change its mind, but prayer is the way that we align our minds and our hearts with divine truth. To become receptive is to release the belief that our good must arrive in one particular way. Sometimes we pray for an answer while secretly deciding what the answer has to look like. I don't know how many times I've done this myself, and I've had folks in communities and churches and other communities through my life, that it has to be just like this. If the answer to what I'm desiring doesn't show up just like this, it's not the answer. And I know you've heard the old story about the flood that came, and the guy, it was broadcast on the radio, and the guy climbed up on his roof, and the floodwaters are rising, and here comes a guy with the boat. And the guy says, "Oh no, God's got me. I love God. Jesus will save me." All of this. The boat goes on, helicopter comes. He goes, "No, I got this. God, I love God. God loves me, and I will be taken care of." And then later on, when the fellow succumbs to the flood, they continue to rise. He's talking to God. He says, "What happened? I love you. I worship you. I do all the right things, and you just let me sit there and die." God says, "Hey, I sent you a radio broadcast. I sent you a boat. I sent you a helicopter. Stop expecting it to be in one way. Be open and receptive, because we never know in what form our good is going to come to us." And so when we're receptive, We say, Spirit, I'm open. We release the attachment to one particular way that it has to show up. And we welcome divine ideas. We say, I am willing to recognize good in expected and unexpected ways. And this doesn't mean that we abandon discernment, but unity teaches us to turn within to the Christ presence and listen for that inner guidance. So being receptive means becoming available to divine direction and then acting upon that guidance with wisdom. There's one more piece I want to cover before we have a time of meditation. And this is something that every time I teach a prosperity class or a class on abundance, it comes up. So many of us are comfortable giving, but we're uncomfortable receiving. So many of us will gladly offer prayer and encouragement, support, time, and resources. And yet when someone offers something to us or something in return, we just, oh no, it's okay. How many of you have gone out to lunch with friends and someone offers to pick up the ticket and you're like, oh no, 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 no. And a lot of times you'll say, I'll get it. And what we're doing is we're shortchanging that flow of divine, universal flow of divine giving and receiving. I know personally, whenever I'm able to do or to give or pick up a lunch ticket, that it brings great joy to my heart. And what I realized one day is when I say no to someone else, I'm robbing that opportunity for that joy in their heart to become. And so when someone offers to do something for you or give you something or pick up a check for a meal, the first thing to do is say, are you sure? Give them another opportunity. And if they say, yes, I'm sure, say, thank you so much. I am grateful for that. And I'm grateful for you. We just need to know that when we lean into resistance, we put blocks up everywhere. And so sometimes that resistance, it grows from an unconditional belief that we're not worthy, but we are worthy. Receiving graciously is one way of honoring the truth of worthiness. And receiving isn't selfish, and it allows another person to express their generosity. Receiving keeps good in circulation. Receiving says, I recognize this blessing and I accept it with gratitude. And so that's very true of this whole aspect of prosperity. We cannot fully receive good if we continue to declare ourselves unworthy of it. You are worthy, and we get to practice. We can practice by saying, I am a beloved expression of God. I am worthy of divine love. I am open to support, and I receive good with gratitude, and I use it wisely. And so it's important that we lean into that. And we need to recognize that, one of our most powerful practices is developing a prosperity consciousness. And gratitude is key to that. Gratitude doesn't mean pretending that everything is perfect, but it means noticing the good that's present and remaining open to a greater good. Oh, it's a wonderful place. It's a wonderful experience to be open to all of that. And it's important that we just bless. I'm reminded of the story of the loaves and fishes, and the disciples, they looked at the crowd and they saw lack. They came back to Jesus and they said, well, we just have this small amount. I mean, here's just a few crumbs and, here's some fish, and they're not even whole fish. Their consciousness was fixed on insufficiency. But what did Jesus do? He began with what was available. He took the bread. He blessed it. He gave thanks, and he shared it. Metaphysically, Jesus represents that Christ consciousness within us, that awareness that sees beyond the appearances and recognizes the divine possibilities. The loaves and the fishes, those represent the ideas already available to us, even when they appear small. The greatest experiences, the greatest things in the world were created with one small idea. That's where it started. And the disciples, well, in that story, they represent that part of our consciousness that calculates only according to appearances. Many times things are much more. You know, on the side of the mirror where it says things are closer than they appear, things are always bigger than they appear. And so what is present that can be blessed, used, and circulated, that's how we do it. We accept it, we bless it, and we circulate it. You know, that's a great thing to do. That's a great way to be. And so it's the beginning of something greater. This week, before I go into meditation, I want to challenge you. I would like for you to take each morning and spend a few moments in the silence and affirm to yourself, God is my source. Divine ideas guide me, and I am open and receptive to my good. And then after you do that, name 3 forms of abundance that are already present in your life. And then at the end of the day, do the same thing. But ask, where did I see God's good today? What divine ideas came to me today? And how did I respond? This helps us become more aware and more conscious of what's going on around us and puts us in a position of greater expansion of our abundance. We open our minds, we open our hearts, and we open our lives. And once again, the affirmation, I am open and receptive to the infinite flow of divine abundance. Every day, I receive and give freely, trusting that good always flows to and through me. And so let's go ahead now and prepare for a time of meditation. And so I invite you and allow your hands to rest gently in your lap. I do apologize that we got lost there for a minute. Oh. And we're going to just bless and have gratitude for the technology that supports us as we move through this time. And as we're in this moment, these few minutes of meditation, I invite you to take a slow, gentle breath in and breathe out. Again, breathe in deeply and peacefully and release. Just let your body settle into this sacred moment. You know, there's nowhere else you need to be. There's nothing you need to prove. And for these next few minutes, rest in the presence of God. Now, unity teaches that God is absolute good everywhere present. And therefore, the presence of God is here in this moment. The presence of God is within you. The presence of God is life expressing. It's expressing His life and wisdom, love and peace. So bring your attention to the center of your heart. Imagine a soft, radiant light within you. And this light, it represents the Christ presence, your divine nature, your willingness, your wholeness, and that sacred image of God within you. And silently to yourself affirm, God is my source. God is my source. Oh, those outer channels of good may change, but the source remains constant. God is the source of wisdom and of love. God is the source of peace and divine ideas. God is the source of every true good. And imagine a light within your heart and imagine it expanding. And it moves through your chest and your shoulders. It moves into your arms and your hands. It fills your entire body. And as Myrtle taught, every cell of your body is alive with divine life and intelligence. And so silently bless your body. Divine life flows through me. Divine wisdom guides me. Divine love sustains me. Oh, yes. And affirm to yourself, I am open and receptive to my good. And so release any belief that your blessings have to arrive in only one form. Release the fear that you have been forgotten or that you're not worthy to receive. Because you are a beloved expression of God. You are worthy of love and support. You are worthy of peace and of a life filled with meaning and purpose. Imagine the hands of your heart opening. You're not grasping. You're not forcing. You're simply available. And divine ideas, they flow to you. Divine peace, it flows through you. And divine love, it surrounds you. So we're going to sit in the silence for just a few moments. And in this time of silence, affirm to yourself, I receive divine good with gratitude. I trust the Christ wisdom within me, and I am guided, supported, and deeply blessed. And as you move into the silence, allow the light within your heart to shine outward and see it blessing your home and your loved ones. See it blessing the spiritual community. Oh, see it blessing the world. For the good you receive becomes good you can share. Take another gentle breath in and out. And when you're ready, open your eyes and silently affirm to yourself, I am open and receptive to the infinite flow of divine abundance. Every day, I receive and freely give, trusting that good is always flowing to and through me. And so it is. Amen. And so I bless you. I thank you. And I look forward to being with you again next month. Be blessed and be kind to each other. Namaste.